When you're over 40 and trying to conceive, it can feel like the whole world is putting pressure on you. Even from our mid-30s, we are told about how we need to hurry up. We've left it too late. Our egg quality is declining, and it is exhausting. And it can feel like nothing you do is enough. But what if you decided to cut out all of that noise and trust that you are more than capable on this journey? Today, I want to share with you Joëlle's story. After pregnancy loss, multiple rounds of IVF, and the loss of so many embryos along the way, and who, despite being told by doctors she should give up and try the donor route instead, she became pregnant at the age of 44. This is such a beautiful story of hope, determination, and proving to yourself how capable you really are. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Okay, I am so excited for you to hear today's conversation. Joëlle's story is one that really blew me away. I met Joëlle after she was several years into her TTC journey. She's actually a yoga teacher herself, but she was looking for someone who was really focused on fertility work. And I think, like so many teachers out there, she was looking for a way to really be held and supported through this time because it is a job that requires you to be there for others. Joëlle had been through a lot, as you're going to hear, but the way her story turned out was one that really defied all of the odds. And I was so excited leading up to this interview. She is also such a beautiful speaker and has the most calming and grounding energy that you are going to hear and be so inspired by. But before we jump into this episode, if you are listening to this in real time, a reminder that today the doors are finally open to the In Your Element Fertility Yoga program. Now, if you have been listening to the podcast for some time, you will have heard me speak about this before. But if you are new and you're just tuning in for the first time today, I want to explain in a little bit of detail what this is. It is the most comprehensive mind-body fertility program available. It is open up for just a few days out of the year, so we can enroll each new student at the same time, and we like to keep the group size limited. This is the exact program that Joëlle went through in the lead up to her pregnancy that you're going to hear about today. So this program combines the perfect combination of both the scientific and the spiritual aspects to fertility support. So inside, you're going to have access to weekly fertility yoga classes. We do monthly coaching calls with our incredible fertility coach, Lauren Enright, who is a neuroscientist and a yoga teacher herself. We do ongoing breathwork, transformative breathwork, and energy sessions. We run monthly workshops with fertility industry experts. So this includes fertility doctors, nutritionists to help you work on lifestyle, diet, supplementation, as well as our fertility nurse. We run tailored programs for each of your exact fertility concerns. So whether you are dealing with endometriosis or PCOS, or you're worried about egg quality, there are programs tailored to each of those. You know what to be doing at each phase of your cycle or in the lead up to treatments. You also get access to our incredible and supportive community of women from all over the world, from 6 different continents, which is just amazing, who are all trying to conceive and understand and can empathize with what you're going through. And you also get ongoing email support with me as well. This is a month-to-month program. You can cancel anytime. So come and join me this week and see if it is right for you. The doors are only open until Wednesday, the 4th of February. Okay, you can tell I'm excited by this program because honestly, it is just everything I wish I'd had when I was trying to conceive. So that leads me perfectly into today's episode. If you are having a hard week or a hard month, or just you need a little bit of inspiration in your life, You are going to love this conversation. Here's Joëlle. Joëlle, you are here, and I am so excited, like just low key a little bit obsessed with your story and how everything has turned out for you. I just cannot wait for everyone to hear this conversation today. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a real thrill to be here for me as well.
I would love to start at the beginning of your journey. So, what did your journey look like? Was being a mum something that you'd always dreamed about? Where does your journey begin?
So, in a word, no, it was not something I had always dreamed about. So, my fertility journey started about 3 years ago now, and I'll just say it up front. It started later for me than it probably does for most people. So, right now I'm 44. I, for a very long time, did not feel drawn to have children. It wasn't something that I had outright rejected, but it just wasn't something I gave much thought to. I didn't feel that that was probably something that was meant for me. I met my husband also a little bit later. We were both 38 when we got married, and we really enjoyed being married without kids. There are a lot of advantages to not having children. I'm also a yoga teacher, so I had also started my online yoga business just a few months actually after we had gotten married. And it was the first time in my life that I was doing something that I just genuinely loved. I was so excited about my work. It happened in my case to be a business that was basically built around my body. So at that point, a pregnancy was just absolutely not something I would have wanted. So then a few years later, my husband had a job opportunity that relocated us from Berlin, where we were living before, to Dubai. And shortly after that move, I felt some sort of shift. I don't even like to say that I changed my mind necessarily. It was just kind of like a new door opened. I was in this new phase of life, and I just started having this little voice that was telling me, it's time now to think about parenthood. And I didn't listen to it at first. It wasn't a voice that I'd ever really heard before. So it kind of took a few months probably to get my attention. And at some point, I just thought to myself, well, you know what? We could just see what happens. So we weren't even, it's not even like we made the decision, flip the switch to try. It was more just like, let's not try. um, and so we kind of, again, opened that door, and I got pregnant literally the first cycle. At that point, I was 41 and a half. I couldn't believe it. It was like my body had been waiting for this. The universe had been waiting for this. I was so excited. I was so proud. I was really proud of myself for listening to that little voice, for listening to all the signs, for waiting for my time, and not letting myself be pressured into anything. And yeah, everything was going great, was looking great. And we got to the 10-week scan, and the heartbeat was gone. And anyone, I'm sure there are other people who are listening to this who've been through similar situations. I think there are no words. There was nothing that could have prepared me for how even now I struggle to find words for how hard that was. It's devastating. It's of course tremendous grief. In my case, I also felt like completely lost essentially because, like I said, it had felt like my body had been waiting for this, and then it immediately gave me what I wanted and then took it away. And so I wasn't sure. I just felt so lost. I wasn't sure what I was meant to take away from that. And at that time, the only, I guess, silver lining you could say was I really held on to the fact that, listen, this one didn't work out, but it happened so quickly, so immediately for us, much faster than we could have ever imagined. Surely it will happen again. And I was positive, it'll happen again within the next couple of months. This one will go all the way. And that absolutely did not happen. So we continued to try for a full year, a little bit over a year, actually. And of course, during that year, again, I'm sure people can relate to the fact that you get more and more it builds up more and more. You try more and more things. You want it more and more. You feel the loss and the grief even more month over month. Um, and it kind of just compounds, or at least that was my experience. I never got another positive result in that 13 or 14-month time frame. So finally, we did decide to turn to IVF. Started my first round the month after I turned 43. We found a very kind doctor who, I'll just say, in spite of her kindness, nevertheless, it made me feel pretty bad about myself. At that point, of course, we'd already been in it for a while. I was carrying so much guilt, so much shame over my age, over the fact that this was obviously my fault, over the fact that I was stupid for having waited too long. And the doctor really fed into that. I'll say my age was constantly brought up. The one thing that there is no treatment for, basically. So because of my age, we were advised to do what's called embryo pooling, which means that you basically do multiple rounds of stimulation, you do multiple egg retrievals, you fertilize those eggs to get as many embryos as you can, and then once you have done a certain number of retrievals, you send whatever you have off for what's called PGTA testing, which is essentially looking at the chromosomes in the embryo. So we did 3 rounds, practically back to back. We got a total of 14 embryos, which is really good. For anyone who doesn't know much about IVF, those are really strong numbers. So I was feeling very, very good, very, very hopeful. We sent those 14 off for testing, and every single one of them came back abnormal. And, I went down such a rabbit hole after that around testing, and to this day, I have never heard of anybody getting such a catastrophic result. It was just unheard of. And just so everyone knows, abnormal embryos are typically considered unusable. So at that point, there was nothing left for us to work with. There was nothing to transfer. Essentially, a 0%, all of that for a 0% chance of pregnancy. And that was the worst phone call of my life. It was that overall experience, I will say, was worse than the miscarriage, because at that point I had been through so much more hope, so much more time, so many more options lost all at once, so much money. I mean, just everything. I went through all the stages of grief. I know a lot of people would say that you cannot grieve an embryo. But I assure you I did. So it took a while for my husband and myself to kind of scrape ourselves off the floor after that one. And at that point, the story that I was telling myself was not only that I needed to be ashamed and feel guilty and feel stupid about my age, but also, even though I clearly had plenty of eggs, they were the worst eggs in the world. That was the story that kept cycling in my mind. That was the reason that my doctor gave me for such devastating results. Was it's your age. There was no talk of the protocol. There was no talk of sperm quality. Just it was clearly, it was my fault, and it wasn't going to happen for us. And so that was my low point. I found out the same month that we got those results. I also found out that my younger sister was pregnant, which fed into that story as well, because here, after all, was someone who was genetically related to me, but just younger. And she had gotten pregnant fairly easily. And she was also my best friend and my confidant. And I had to take a step back from that. So it was the loneliest time in my life. I felt like everything was just against me. I don't know how to explain how low I was at that point. But somehow I just felt like we weren't done. But I did feel like we were done with that particular clinic, and it's not to throw anyone under the bus, but I couldn't keep going on that journey while feeling so bad about myself. So I knew that if we were going to try again, we needed a doctor who who truly believed that it was possible for us and who would support me in the way I needed to be supported. So we found a new doctor. I will never forget the first meeting with her because essentially she did a scan of my ovaries and she said, she kind of cocked her head and she said, "You're 43." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Your ovaries are not. You're going to be fine." And I almost just burst into tears right there because it was such a simple thing for her to say, but it gave me back so much hope. And I just knew that I was in the right place, that even if this didn't work, that I was at least working with someone who was part of my team, so to speak, the right partnership. So we made a plan with her. We took a big leap of faith. We decided not to do PGTA testing in however many embryos we happened to get, because at that point, not so much that I didn't believe the testing, but I had to give my body a chance. I couldn't go through that again to get another result like that. Um, I just had to see what happened, because who makes 14 embryos and doesn't even get to the transfer stage? Like it was just so implausible. So we went through the retrieval. We made a plan. We were going to transfer 2 embryos. Like I said, untested. We finally made it to transfer day. So at this point, I've been doing IVF for, I guess, about 8 or 9 months. I could have had a baby in that time, but instead I'd just been waiting and waiting. So we're super excited. We're on our way to the hospital. 5 minutes away from the hospital, we get a phone call, and it's the lab telling us that one of our 2 embryos did not survive the thaw. And that hit me very hard because, it was the last possible minute where we again had this little container of grief and devastation. Of course, I'm already thinking that our odds are so low, and now we've just cut them in half. And it was, it was sort of the last hurdle of difficulty, because lo and behold, the one embryo that we did transfer did stick, and I am now 24 weeks pregnant. Um, Everything has been going really well. We've done all the tests, all the scans. Everything has come back looking great. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to be where we are, and to have our little boy coming in May.
Joelle, I'm in tears. I have so many questions for you. Your journey is amazing. It's sort of, it's when you look at things and you think none of it makes sense. None of it makes
Mhm.
sense. On
Yeah.
paper, you had the natural pregnancy. Why couldn't you do that again? You had
Yeah.
14
Mhm.
embryos.
Yeah.
How is it possible that not a single one? I mean, the chances
Mhm.
of that, and against all the odds, that little untested embryo that
Yeah.
survived the thaw ended up being
Mhm.
the one. And it
Yeah.
just goes to show you have no idea what this journey holds for you. And it's just not an exact science, is it? It just,
It's not.
I kind of wish it was. It would be a lot easier if you could just go, here I am, let's do the things so I get the
Yeah.
outcome I want. But that's
Wouldn't that be nice?
kept you on your toes right to the very, very
Mhm.
end.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I really relate to what you said about finding a doctor that actually believed that it
Mhm.
was possible for you.
Mhm.
When I started IVF, I was 34, and I was
Mhm.
already hearing that rhetoric around, well, fertility falls off a cliff when you're 35.
Yeah.
And by the time I
Mhm.
got to my last round of IVF, I was 38. And
Yeah.
it's just thrown in your face constantly. And it's like,
Yeah.
I am aware of my age. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't have to
Yeah.
tell me again. And
Yeah.
I find that is really unhelpful, for lack of a better word,
Yes. Mhm.
isn't it? But also the importance of just finding someone who really does think that you are capable, because I think that we are a lot more capable than we give ourselves
Mhm.
credit for. And you're just constantly thrown, your egg quality and you're over 40.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, why are you even bothering? And I get emails every
Mhm.
week from women who are in that
Yeah.
position. So what was it about that sort of cycle and that place that you got to where you're like, do you know what? I actually think that this is possible for me. Like what did that shift
Mhm.
look like? How did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was really hard. And like I said, the first thing I had to do, I'll just repeat it. I had to scrape myself off the floor because I think when you get just terrible news, no matter what that news is, you have to kind of give yourself some time to process it. It would not have been possible at that point for me to make rational decisions, I don't think. And that was a real process, and I'm not sure that there was anything I could have done to speed it up. Because like I said, I went looking for women who had stories like mine, who had, 14 plus embryos come back. I couldn't find any, none. Um, there was there was nobody whose story I could hitch any amount of hope onto at that point. Um, and I couldn't tell you how long it took exactly, except that at some point that little voice popped back into my head saying, "You're not done." Because I kept asking myself, what was the meaning of all of this? Why did it take me until the age of 41 to even really want to be a parent? And then there must have been some reason that it happened for us right away, but then didn't work out. And so I started to, you look for whatever it is that can give you hope in it, particularly in dark times. And I actually, when that happened, and like I said, when my sister was pregnant, and that really hurt our relationship, and it was hard on her as well. I want to be clear about that. She deserved to have her big sister around at the vulnerable point that she was at, going through her first pregnancy, and I could not be there for her in the way that I normally would have, and that would have been very different if I had had my first baby. Um, but I started to see that first baby as almost like a messenger. Like even though I never got to hold that baby in my arms, it still had a message for me. And that message was parenthood is part of your story. And I I didn't know how yet, but that's what I found in the darkest of times to hold on to, was that I had already gotten some sort of message, whether you want to call it from the universe or from that baby itself, um, that there was more to my story than just giving up. Because th- that was the message that I was being given at that point, is, you know, try donor eggs. It's not going to happen for you. Um, not meant to be, basically. And on top of that, I'll just say that especially if you're over 40, you also have to deal with the fact that even if this does eventually work out, there are people who are going to say that you should not be having children over 40, that you're being selfish. And it's very um, galling when you're doing all the things to try to give the gift of life to another human being, and to be told that all of this is just a selfish desire on your part. So I wish I had a clearer answer in terms of what that shift was. I'm sure it's different for everyone who goes through such a difficult time. But this journey is my conclusion after going through so much is that this journey is mostly about resilience, because you you won't you never win the lottery without buying a ticket, right? You have to continue to be there, and whether that's doing another round of treatment, whether it's continuing to try naturally, there are different ways of kind of keeping your hat in the ring. But just finding any amount of belief in yourself where you think, I think I still have something to give, um, is it was the only thing I could do at that point. Because the other thing is also to consider maybe the alternative, if that's helpful to hear, because had I given up, there was no guarantee that maybe like a year down the line or something, that I might not have regretted that decision to give up. And then it would have been even harder, perhaps. So it just felt like the only thing to do was to keep going, to prove those naysayers wrong, whatever it takes to keep you in the game.
That's such a great answer. And I love that so much because, as we mentioned before, there's just so much shame that comes with, oh gosh,
Yeah.
how dare I be 40 and I want to have a baby? And
Mhm.
why? Why is that? Why is that the rhetoric that we tell women? And it drives me crazy, because you were saying that it's a selfish thing, but my goodness, I look at some of the things that my students are doing to support their bodies and their overall health as they're trying to conceive, regardless of their age. And there are 25-year-olds who get pregnant that are nowhere near as healthy as
Mm.
a lot of the women that I work with. I think, what would your baby prefer? Your baby wants a parent that wants them more than anything in the world, and is willing to get their body into a place of, I'm going to do whatever it takes and I'm going to be as healthy as
Mhm.
possible. And there, there is, shame doesn't even come close to any of that.
Mhm.
I try to remind people that you are so worthy because you want something so bad. You're worthy of it just because you want it. Oh, again, I have so many questions. Okay. I want to ask you about, so you're a yoga teacher as well. And I actually
Yes.
get quite a lot of yoga teachers who come and work with
Mhm.
me. And I think, as we were saying before we hit record, it is such a giving job. You are so much in that space of giving yourself to other people and being there and supporting others. And when you're going through something as hard as struggling with fertility, you just need someone to hold that space and just be like, do you know what?
Mhm.
I'm going to take the backpack of rocks off you today. I'm going to just make things
Mm.
a little bit lighter, and you get to hand over some of that. So, what was it about where you were at that time that made you say, I need someone else to look after me for a little bit? What drew you to
Mhm.
the fertility yoga practice?
Sure. So I think obviously I had a little bit of an advantage in the sense that I already knew that yoga, meditation, other practices, like I also love EFT tapping is a part of my daily life. I already knew that I loved those, and I already knew that those were beneficial, which wouldn't be the case for someone, for instance, who is brand new to something like yoga. What many people may not realize, especially if they're not as familiar with these practices, is that yoga teachers, just like many other professions, we do kind of tend to specialize. So we'll all get our general yoga degrees, but then we might be more drawn to certain types of teaching, certain types of students or audiences. So, for example, I mostly teach my students about pain management and mobility. So I have seen firsthand, both in my own body and in many of my student bodies, that these practices can and do make a difference. So that was kind of my starting point, I suppose. So it just kind of always made sense to me that for something like fertility, which was the biggest problem that I was certainly facing in the past couple of years, that it would make sense to go to someone who had specialized in that versus what I was doing. I think, as a teacher, and this might resonate with you as well, Jen, um, there were times on this journey where it was very difficult to be a yoga teacher because I had a lot of self-doubt around the fact of, well, who am I to tell people how to move their bodies when I can't even get my body to do this incredibly basic, natural thing? So there were days where I did not want to practice yoga. There were days where I did not want to be a yoga teacher. There were days where I did not want this to be how I made my living. Um, but giving that, I'll just call it control, away to someone else and not having, of course, I could have put together my own classes. And I did and still do occasionally, but there was just something about having that weight lifted off, almost, about saying, well, I'm just not even going to think about it. I'm not going to think about, should I do a child's pose next, or a standing sequence or whatever. I'm just going to follow what the teacher tells me to. I'm going to let myself be guided. This is something that I don't need to try to control. So it's really nice to get that support from someone who is specialized. And it also made me feel just a little bit less alone, even if I wasn't practicing in person, even if I wasn't practicing live. It was just, somebody that I could share that moment with. on the mat.
I say this all the time to people where they're sort of saying, well, how does it work online? Because I think for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, doing yoga or doing any kind of movement it's sort of new to them to do it online.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I think it worked out a lot better than I ever thought it would when obviously COVID happened and we all had to teach online all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden. But I just found it worked so well because it's hard to get a group of women together in, one particular area of a city who all understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's very rare. But it's much easier to get a whole bunch of women together from all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to do it online, the energy is there. It is there as much
Mm-hmm.
as it would be if we were in a room
Yeah.
together. And without even having to say anything, you just know you are surrounded by people who get it. And when
Mm-hmm.
you have a teacher who's been through the process as well, I find,
Mm-hmm.
when I started doing fertility yoga as a student, my instructor or teacher, she had also had her own fertility struggles. And it just felt like such a big hug just to be around that
Mm-hmm.
energy of someone who understood, and they don't ask
Yeah.
stupid questions and they don't say the wrong thing. So that is incredibly powerful. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it was between your when you found out all of your embryos hadn't come back
Mm-hmm.
euploid and you couldn't transfer them.
Yeah.
That's when I think I met you, and you were gearing
Mm-hmm.
up and like, well, what can we do and what can we do differently? And there was so much, I'm sure, that was going through your mind. So how
Mm-hmm.
did leaning into some of these practices, even if it was just you watching one of the fertility videos at home and doing it
Mm-hmm.
yourself, how did you find these helpful?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, what you're saying kind of ties into the if I had to pick one emotion that sort of reigned supreme over this entire journey for me, it would be loneliness. I think you can sort of wrap your head, even if you haven't been through a journey like this one, you can wrap your head around the fact that it's probably difficult and there might be grief and pain and other emotions. I could have never foreseen how incredibly lonely I felt throughout it. Because you basically you can either tell people what you're going through, but that raises the risk of being misunderstood or of being told things that make it worse, and that did happen to me a few times with people I was close to. So then I stopped telling people, which means I was not sharing the biggest thing in my life with the people that I was closest to. So either way, I felt lonely and misunderstood. And there were kind of three things that finally changed that for me right around the same time, and right before I ended up getting pregnant again. The first one was joining your program. I kind of, as I was telling you earlier, I stumbled onto you on YouTube. That brought me to your podcast, and that eventually led to me joining your program. And that's been very beneficial. In fact, I joined it about 1 month before my transfer, so I didn't even get to go through the all the IVF modules. But now I'm going through the prenatal modules, and there's postpartum things in there as well. So it's just been a really enriching form of support that I can turn to pretty much on my own time because I love practicing online. I love being able to pick how long of a, do I have 10 minutes today? Do I have 20 minutes today? Do I want to work out in the morning or evening, or that's entirely up to me. So that was the first thing that I found. The second thing was that I hired a fertility mindset coach. Her name is Kelly Lynch. In case anyone is looking, she absolutely came into my life at the right time. She's been such a wonderful form of one-on-one support. And then the third thing was a local support group here in Dubai for women going through IVF. Which made me feel so seen. And I have become such good friends with many of the women in that community. And even when my quote unquote non-fertility friends couldn't meet me where I needed to be met, those people were there for me. So at that point, I had three just incredible forms of support come into my life at about the same time. Like I said, I had the one-on-one, I had the local support, and then I had the online mindset and movement practices through your program. So all of those kind of combined to just helping me find myself, helping me feel listened to, helping me keep going, and also just treat myself with more kindness, less blame, less guilt, um, and continue to believe that that the story just wasn't over yet. So it's not so much about practices like yoga. I'd love to say that something like yoga can guarantee a pregnancy. We all know there are no guarantees. There is no actual control over when something might happen for each one of us. But it's about, again, just finding the thing or the things that will keep some amount of hope alive for you on your journey.
I completely agree with that. It's this idea of building a team. And we think, well,
Mm-hmm.
the way I approached my fertility journey when I started going down the route of treatments, I was like, well, my doctor has all the answers. And
Mm-hmm.
well, obviously IVF will work because why wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How could I
Yeah.
pay all this money and spend so much of my
Yeah.
time and energy in it? It's incomprehensible. And then we realize
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't always work and the doctors don't always have the answers. And whilst they're incredible, they're not everything that everyone needs completely, I
Mm-hmm.
find.
Mm-hmm.
And I was speaking to a fertility doctor about this recently, and she said it is so essential that, yes, you have a good doctor and you trust them and they've got your back and they're really rooting for you. But you can't go through this process without that emotional support and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
fallback where you've got someone to catch you because your fertility doctor is not a therapist. They're not your friend. There is so much more to this. And I think that we are more resilient. We're more capable. We're able to pick ourselves up off the floor again, not more
Mm-hmm.
easily, but eventually when we have that support around us. And without that, I think a lot of us wouldn't have gotten to the pregnancy or to the baby or the family
Yeah.
because it would
Mm-hmm.
have been all encompassing. And I don't know if you felt this, but in my mind, I thought the injections were going to be the worst part of IVF. I thought, oh, I'm so scared of all the
Mm-hmm.
needles.
No, not
It's
even close.
not even close. You don't even think about it. It's like, oh, what's another needle today? It's what you said. It's the loneliness. And
Yeah.
it changes everything. Like you said, that relationship with your sister. And gosh,
Mm-hmm.
this journey can take so much from you without you
Yeah, it really
realizing.
does.
So you do need that support. Mm.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, I think, there's such obviously having a baby is a physical act, right? You're trying to create a whole new other human being. But I think it would be an oversimplification to say that is all there is to it, is the physical side. If you think about it, parenthood is not simply a physical act. It's going to test you emotionally and mentally. And I mean, I'm not even there yet, and I'm already kind of foreseeing that. So why should we not accept help or support on the the other paths on this journey, the mental side, the emotional side, potentially the spiritual side. That was what drew me actually to Kelly, to my coach. She calls them pillars. Where yes, of course, physically you try to do all the things, and I mean, gosh, I couldn't even tell you how many supplements I took or how many dietitians I went to see, or gosh, I went to see a shaman. I had my womb misty. I mean, the things that you start to turn to where you think, well, what if that is the magical switch that's going to, tip me over into seeing those two lines next month. Um, but it did become more, what's the word I'm looking for? Somehow more approachable or more manageable, I suppose, when I knew that I wasn't alone, where I knew that, okay, no matter what the result of this next phone call or this next test result is, I have people that I can call. This is who I'm going to talk to. If it's a good result, this is who I'm going to talk to. If it's not the result I want, just having having someone in your corner is huge. And I know that if this transfer had not worked, I would have still been able to keep going. Um, So just again, just finding what it is that will help you keep um, that self-belief. And doctors are certainly a part of it. And I am so incredibly grateful we found the right one. But that wasn't the only thing that made a difference for me.
Mm. I would love to go back to something that you said towards the start of our conversation, which was around
Mhm.
what was that baby trying to teach you? That pregnancy
Mm.
where it was so easy, so natural.
Mhm.
And it's like
Yeah.
everything had finally come together, and then you lost that baby.
Yeah.
And I think about this a lot because, I have one of those journeys. It doesn't make any sense. And on paper,
Mhm.
things worked out not the way that I was told they would ever work out. And I look back at my journey and I've been over this many times. I think, well, what did it try and teach me? And I truly
Mm.
believe that it was teaching me to come to the work that I do now. And
Mm.
that's
Mhm.
completely changed my life. And I think that there is something where you can't explain it, where it doesn't make sense on paper. And you think,
Mhm.
there is something bigger at play here. And especially, I think I attract a lot of people to my work who aren't necessarily religious, but they're looking for
Mhm.
something bigger than themselves, I think is the best way to explain it. So what do you say to people who you're looking at like why me? Why is this happening to me?
Mhm.
Why on earth am I going through that? Is there any
Yeah.
advice or words that you would want to share with someone in that position?
Gosh, it's so hard. I guess the first thing I would say to anyone is I'm so sorry that you're going through this. It sucks. It's easily the hardest thing I've ever been through, and I'm sure many women or couples might relate to that as well. And I think taking a moment to just kind of acknowledge once in a while that this is unfair. This is difficult beyond belief, difficult in ways that people who have not been through it cannot understand. And that it you just deserve to sort of take a beat for that moment of reflection and compassion once in a while. Because if you're anything like me, you're probably spending enough time beating yourself up that just once in a while you should break it up and offer yourself some kindness. So that's the first thing that I would say. What I would say also is look for it. One thing I found really helpful was to look for stories that may not have been identical to mine, but that had aspects that could give me hope. Like I said, I could not find anyone who had lost more embryos, but I could find women who were even older than I was, even who were even having babies naturally, several years older than I was. So that told me that, okay, my age is almost definitely a factor in my journey, no question. But it's not a diagnosis all by itself, and it's not a guarantee that this won't work. Because if it were all about age, then how is that 46-year-old woman over there having a healthy baby? So the more I found evidence that my story was not necessarily completely true, the more it kind of gave me reasons to keep going. So I would encourage anybody, if that resonates at all, like if anyone's listening to this who's over 40 and it can just help you to know that it eventually worked out for me, then I hope that can give you a little ray of light, or finding more stories like that. Um, and I would also tie it back to, I guess, two words that come up for me a lot are resilience and hope. Um, this journey will require resilience for many of us. More people than we might think go through some sort of journey like this. And I was so happy to have found your podcast, Jen, but please don't take this the wrong way. It's also one that we probably wish we didn't have to listen to, right? I mean, nobody wants to have to go through this journey, and yet, what what if this is part of making you a better parent? That was something that I eventually sort of came around to. I think if I had had that first baby, of course I would have loved it, and of course I would have done my very, very best. But I don't think that I would have been able to approach parenthood with the same amount of patience or compassion or um, understanding or even love, probably, than I will be able to hopefully offer this little boy who's now in the way. So I do think it's made me a better parent. Do I still wish I had had an easier journey? Yes, of course. Um, but maybe it was simply meant to be, and maybe what I'll take away from this, and if I project myself, let's say 10 years into the future, I can look back and say, well, gosh, I showed a lot of strength and I showed a lot of resilience, and I didn't give up even when experts were telling me that this wasn't going to happen for me. Um, and maybe that will help me through other challenges in my life. Who's to say? So, my husband, who does not do yoga and is not at all a woo woo person, even he is repeatedly saying, I wouldn't go back and change any part of this, because this got us to where we are now. And if you removed even just one step from our journey, things might look very different right now. So if even someone like him can reflect on that. Another thing is, I think it made us closer. We already had a great relationship, but I think we've been able to be more open with one another. I think I know that I made, like I said, really close friends on this journey, people who I would never have even met otherwise. So I guess I would say to someone, even if you're still in the thick of it, can you find any sort of silver linings or threads of hope that will keep you going, where if you imagine yourself on the other side of it, you might start to be able to look back and even find some amount of gratitude for what you went through and what you survived. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes beautiful sense. And it's a
Okay.
very
Mhm.
hard thing to say, because you're kind of in that place where you haven't met your baby yet. So it's,
Mhm.
you're not on the other side where it's like, okay, that's completely behind me, because pregnancy after
Yeah.
loss is no joke. But it's very
Mhm.
hard to sit in the place of, well, I haven't got my happy ending yet.
Yeah.
And to
Mhm.
say, well, could this possibly be giving me anything that's going to change my life in the future? And I think it's really helpful to hear from
Mhm.
someone who is still, in not too far away from everything that you went through. It's, and I think about it like nothing will test your relationship like fertility struggles.
Mhm.
Nothing. It's just, if you can make it through that, you can make it through all of the sleepless nights with a newborn in the world. And I don't know what it's like to have children easily, but I look at
Mhm.
my children now and I think there is no way someone who didn't struggle could know how I feel looking at these little
Mhm.
people. And I think that is a huge gift. And I will
Mhm.
take that to my grave. I am so lucky that I get to have that appreciation for my children. And I know everyone loves their children. We all appreciate them and we all know that. But to go through everything that we go through and to have that feeling, yeah, I think that we're very lucky we get that
Yeah.
connection. Joelle,
Yeah.
I could speak to you for hours. I think you are incredible.
Oh.
Your gentle grace and the way you hold yourself and the way that you knew what was possible for you and you just didn't give up despite what doctors were telling you, despite what the world around you was trying to tell you. You knew that you weren't done and that there was
Mhm.
more to your story. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how inspiring this is going to be for so many other women who
Oh.
are going to listen to
Oh.
this. And like you said, it sucks that my podcast exists. It really does. And I'm very sorry that you're here listening to it, everyone. But also at the same time, I want you to listen to these conversations and to feel inspired by them, to take whatever action you
Mhm.
can in your life. But also, I want you to not need me anymore. I want to be this
Mhm.
this path that you walked on from one part of your life to the next. So it is my intention that people come across my work and then they get to the point they don't need me anymore. That's where I would like to send everyone off to. So I want to say thank you again. You are absolutely incredible, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. And if I can just tell one final little anecdote. So like I said, I found your podcast not too long before doing our transfer, which was ultimately successful. And when I first found it, I very clearly remember having a thought of, I want to be a guest on that podcast one day. So you have fulfilled you've helped me fulfill another dream. And I say that not because I so desperately wanted to be on a podcast, but more because I thought this would be a nice way of one day being able to look back at this entire journey. And I hopefully, if this is helpful to even just one person to hear, then I hope it can make a difference. So,
Thank you, Joelle.
thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to link up your YouTube channel at the bottom of the show.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because
and anyone is welcome to reach out to me. I've tried to share very openly in the hopes that it might help somebody else. So I'm really wishing all the very best to anyone who's listening.
Thank you. And I'm sure people would love to reach out to you. So Thank you again, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you for listening right to the end of this episode. And my goodness, how amazing is she? If you want to reach out to Joelle, I have linked her details down in the show notes. Now, before we finish up, remember you have just a few days to enroll in the In Your Element Fertility Yoga program. It is only open until Wednesday, the 4th of February, or until places are full. All the links are in the show notes. And if you have questions about any of this, any of the inclusions, or whether it might be right for you, please reach out to me via email or DM on Instagram. Now, next week on the podcast, we are diving into those rock bottom moments on your trying to conceive journey. And I want to help you answer the question, how do you keep going when it feels like everything is falling apart? So until then, I am sending you all of my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life, and they have no idea how to get back to a place of calm, peace, and regulation. This January, I am hosting a free 3-day live fertility yoga event. In this series, I will be taking you through my exact process for helping you move through this. We start by giving you the tools to help regulate your nervous system. We then work with your cycle to support your hormones and to know which practices support you at each phase. And lastly, and what I think is the most important part, is that I'll help reconnect you with your body and rebuild the trust that is needed to bring your baby home. I've taken hundreds of women through this process, and what I hear time and time again is that these practices give them back that sense of peace that this journey takes from you so easily. And it's something that you'll carry through with you to motherhood and beyond. So join me. We start on January 28th. Visit elementpilatesyoga.com/waitlist or click the link in the show notes. And I can't wait to see you there.